Donald X Vaccarino's Dominion came out in 2009, and it felt like it changed the game industry because it introduced a new tool for game design, that is deck building. The deck building was not new at the time in that people who play collectible card games made decks that they would then play with, but the deck building now became an in-game element, something you do during play to try to make better odds for yourself in whatever you're doing. You want to adapt to what's available to you to reach whatever the goal is for that particular game. Now, Dominion had a lot of followers that changed things in subtle ways, how you get cards or what you do with cards, or you would have different currencies that would have different effects in play. And at this point, 10 years later, deck building is just a thing that is part of other games. It's not necessarily the only thing present in a game, or it's not used in the same way. It's just a tool. And you can see that in practice with runestones, designed by Rudiger Dorn, coming out from Queen Games at the end of 2019, debuting at Spiel 19, for 2 to 4 players, in which you are both building a deck and destroying a deck during the game. But it doesn't really feel like deck building so much as resource collection, in how Dorn has integrated deck building into his design, with the longer goal of acquiring artifacts in order to collect points, with points being the whole goal at the end. Here's how it works. Here's Runestone's setup for a 3-player game. Note that this is a mock-up copy provided by Queen for review purposes, and the final production will not have this glossy paper on it. It will not have paper cards inside plastic sleeves. You can see the look of the game and understand how it works, but the actual production will differ. The goal of the game is to sit on this throne. Not literally, because you can barely stick a couple of fingers on it, but you are in a race to get 65 points. The game ends the round that someone reaches that total. You finish out that round, have some endgame scoring, and whoever has the most points wins. You and your fellow players represent druids. Each player gets one of these boards. Again, mock-up. It will be cut more cleanly in the final version. And you have a deck of 8 cards that represent your powers. Each card has 3 elements on it. It has some magic powers up at the top that come in 4 colors that match the colors of the gemstone, with a clear gemstone being wild. This is the buying power of these cards. You have a joker, which can be any color you want. So when you acquire cards, this is what you're using to do so. Each card has a number on it, with your starting cards all being 100 or higher. Each card also has an effect on the side. Roll the die, get ore. You get either gem of your choice, 2 gems, you get some points. Get a gem the color of your choice. So you shuffle the deck, you draw 4 cards for your starting hand, and then you begin the game. On your turn, you're going to do one of 3 things. You, as a druid, can call on the creatures of the forest to come help you. You can acquire new cards for 1 to 4 points. So you are going to spend the cards by choosing cards of 1 color, so I can spend either of these for 2 points, or these 2 cards together because they're both green for 3 points. I place those cards in the discard pile. I have 3 points of buying power. Let's say I buy these 2. I put them in my discard pile, slide everything down, flip over new cards. We have seen this before in other deck building games. Now I lower the cost of cards for other people, and possibly they buy them instead of me. I refill my hand to 4. Perhaps on the next turn, I want to use the powers of some of my cards. When you do so, you must play 2 cards from your hand. And let's say I play these 2. I am going to use their powers in whatever order I want, because cards have lots of different effects. I can get either or a gem. I can spend 2 yellow gems for 3 points, so I can always get yellow and then spend it using this card, if this card were in my hand. Use them in the order of your choice. So I get 2 red, and I roll the die. The die may give me points. It may give me ore. It's on the board. Oh, I get an ore. And that's my turn. Except for the final part, the sort of twist for runestones, you're deck building by acquiring creatures, but that doesn't get you anywhere, just making your deck bigger or adding more stuff to it. You want to use the powers to further your quest for points, but each time you play cards for their effect, you look at the 2 cards. Whichever one has the higher number is removed from the game. Yes, out of play completely. And the other card is placed in your discard pile. So each time you play cards, your deck is going to shrink as you get some benefit. So if I wanted to use this card repeatedly to use the power of the die, see what I get at random, I can't, unless I play something higher than a 104 with it. But the highest card in my deck is 107, so I have limited options. I refill my hand to 4 cards. The third thing you can do on a turn, aside from acquiring creatures, aside from playing cards for powers, is to acquire artifacts. You have artifacts in 4 colors that match the 4 colors of the gems, that match the 4 colors of the cards, that match the 4 icons depicted on your druid board. You also have a space for a wild artifact, which you have a stack of here. The other artifacts are laid out at random. The cost for an artifact is 2 to 4 of that color. So I need 4 yellow, 3 blue, 3 yellow, 2 red. I have 2 red from the card I played before, so I can spend 2 red, take an artifact, it doesn't matter which one in this case. I put it on my board, I draw a new one at random and put it in that spot. Also red. If you acquire this artifact, you roll the die, get the benefit. Here you take an ore, here you get 3 points. This one costs any 4 gems. Doesn't matter, it can be matching gems or not. You get a wild artifact. That's the only way to put an artifact in this space on your board. But if you acquire another one, you can put it somewhere else as well. Well, I should put it on green because there's no green available at the moment. At the end of your turn, after acquiring artifacts or using gems or doing something else, you can cash in your artifacts for points, with you getting 3, 6, 10, or 15 points for discarding 2 to 5 artifacts. So, standard scoring here. In a game, the more you get of something, the more valuable the things are that you acquire later, but of course, the more difficult it is. I need a blue and a yellow. If someone buys this blue and the replacement blue doesn't come up, then I need this wild, which costs 4 gems instead of possibly 2. So I cash them in. If I had these 3 here, I could cash them in for 6 points. The wild goes back in the stack. The others, one goes aside, and we shuffle it if we run out of these. I get 6 points. I move up the track, and whenever I cash in artifacts, I acquire a rune stone, up to a maximum of 4 rune stones. And here's where we get the name of the game. You have 8 different rune stones, each with a different power on them, and you get the effect of that rune stone as soon as you acquire it. So this one gives me 2 points of buying power. Whatever color of cards I play, and possibly by playing no cards at all, I can have 2 extra coins available to me to buy things. Or this one, I choose a color and that gem will be wild for me for the rest of the game. So maybe I've been specializing in acquiring blue creatures that give me blue gems, however that works. And so now when I acquire blue, I can use it as any color I wish. Or I can have a hand of 6 cards, which is good, more choices. Or I can play 3 cards on a turn for their powers, with me discarding the higher 2 numbers of those 3 from the game. This one, you can exchange a gem for an ore or vice versa. An ore is valuable because when you acquire artifacts, and you can acquire at most 2 artifacts on a turn, you can hand in 3 ore to acquire any 1 artifact. So that's the only use of ore, except for endgame points where it's worth 1/3 of a point. You acquire the ore, get whatever you want. If you acquire these with ore, you don't get the special bonus, because otherwise you sort of have an ore engine here where I can just keep getting ore for buying that. This one and this one, whenever I play cards from my hand for effects, if I would earn points, I earn an additional point. If I do this one, I roll the die and I get the effect twice. This one here, instead of using either or, get a blue or a yellow, I instead do both, which has proven awesome. I'm slightly worried about that, but I don't know. We'll see. I've played 4 games so far. So those are the different things. Acquire creatures, play creatures for power, spend your gems to acquire artifacts to give you points, race to 65. And there's an overview of Runestones, which I played 4 times on a mock-up copy from Queen Games, 3 times with 2 players, once with 3 players. As I mentioned in the overview, this is a race game. Yes, you're not worrying about getting the most points because it's a race for 65. You will have the most if you get there first. At least that's been our experience over 4 games, where you score points at the end of the game. Whatever artifacts you've collected on your board, you still cash them in for points. You still collected them, so you get the point reward. You just don't cash them in to get a runestone, because of course runestones don't matter once the game is over. You will get your 3 to 15 points. All the gems you collect, the ore you collect, those are 1/3 of a point each. You add those to your totals, and whoever has the most points wins. But that has not mattered in our 4 games, where even after adding in the endgame points, the winner has been more than 10 points ahead of whoever is in second or third. It's just been runaway. And it's mostly been my opponents running away, where I have not found the rhythm yet to build a deck and destroy it in order to reach that point total first. And what happens is, if you look at the 3 actions of the game, acquiring creatures is making your deck bigger, and acquiring artifacts does nothing with your deck, keeps it the same. Using the powers makes it smaller. So you have this ebb and flow of your deck over the course of the game, and I've just mostly been adding to it, building up strategies that over time would pay off in certain ways, and yet the time hasn't been there. I have not converted or shifted over to that second phase of the game where I just need to burn through my entire deck to score points as quickly as possible. Runestones feels like a very traditional Queen games where they have a lot of processional designs. Something where I do this, to do this, to do this, and then cash in or build something or get something. Where you've got these stages that you're going through. And that fits runestones to a T, where you are generally acquiring creatures to acquire gems, to acquire artifacts, to turn them in for points. And then runestones, which are going to affect everything along that path of acquiring and using things. So there's various steps that you're going to go through, and you try to step through them as quickly as possible. And the runestones all give you powers that affect that, where you can play more cards, or you get more stuff, or you can more easily acquire things. They all affect the different elements in different ways. I have used the Nocturnal Creatures expansion in one of my games. This adds different elements that plays into the card numbers, among other things, because your starting cards are all 100 and higher, and you're going to burn through those. They're kind of shields to protect the cards that you acquire so that you can use them ideally multiple times before they go away. So you look at some of the cards that you can acquire, especially the dragons. There's a whole bunch of dragons in the 70 range. They all have multicolor buying power. You can't have dragons in the starting row at the beginning of the game because it possibly gives the first player too much of an advantage to be able to acquire it because of that buying power. But they also have awesome effects. Like this one, acquire 2 gems of the color of your choice. It's great to have that, and there's lots of things, acquire points and do all sorts of other stuff. They're great, but they're 70s. So they are the highest cards in the main game other than your starting cards. So you kind of need that one of your starting cards to play with it to shield that dragon, so then you can bring it back again as it goes through your deck, and eventually it's going to go away. Or the cards in the 60s that also have good powers, and they're going to go away as well. You have this one, which is in the teens, where you discard a wild to get 3 gems. That's great. It's a low number. You're probably going to use that a lot, but you need the wilds to make it happen. So you got lots of timing issues in terms of how things come out, and of course it's just random from how you put your deck together and what comes into your hand. You can try to craft it a little bit. Oh, I'm going to buy to delay. I'm going to buy because I don't want to throw away that card yet. I don't want to lose its ability. But if you're buying with it, then you're not using its ability anyway. So it hardly matters. And that's sort of been my trap, is buying and trying to plan for the future and how everything's going to roll out, and then the game ends. So it's interesting because it has all the feel of the deck building, but you have to change your mind and focus on what you're trying to do at particular times as you just hit the pedal and race towards 15. You have luck elements in the game based on which artifacts come up in which space at which time, with the 2 spots where you can buy artifacts for only 2 gems. Sometimes you'll get the perfect thing that flips out and you have been stockpiling those gems, or you have wilds available, or and you can just buy the gem cheaply versus the ones that cost 4, or the wild to fill in a spot for a color that just hasn't shown up. So So you have some luck elements there, but of course you're also making your own luck by being able to have those resources available and put them out there. So it has that luck element of the deck building game, but you can still play better as shown by my opponents, where they've converted better. As I mentioned with the overview of the rune stones, those all affect how the different elements of the game come together. We've had some issues where it seems like the runestone, where instead of getting either or thing, you get both. It seems really good. And we played the first game where the player won by more than 30 points. And then I acquired it in the second game, because in a 2-player game, you only have one of each runestone. And then I won by, I forget, 15 or something. So it seems really good, but it also just seems like perhaps it's the most obvious good thing that you can do, because you already start the game with those optional cards in your deck. They often come up. You can acquire them easily, and you've doubled the power of them compared to your opponents. It's not that it's broken, it's just it works really well. So keep that in mind. I'm much mindful, if you've not seen Rodney Smith's video called That's Overpowered, talking about how games are broken, and often it's just broken because you haven't played them enough and figured out how to do things better. I've seen this as well with the runestone, where you can spend 3 cards and the highest 2 numbered of them are discarded and the other one goes back to your deck. So you're burning through your deck. 2/3 of it just goes away. And I acquired that, and I didn't use it enough. I just kept waiting for the right moment at the right time, and the game ends. So you have to be able to turn on the powers the right way, put everything together, and just push yourself across the finish line, which maybe I'll do when I play it again. We'll see how it works out. So, there you go. An overview of runestones. Going to be out at Spiel 19 for Queen Games and Rudiger Dorn.